Hello everybody, hope everyone's doing good. In today's session 3, that is module 3, titled Mechanical Safety, we'll discuss what are the safety precautions that has to be taken while handling material, or whether it is waste drum and containers, corrosive materials, or compressed gas cylinders. So today's session will discuss about what are the safety precautions or safety uh, while handling material has to be taken. As you can see in the cartoon as shown, safety material practice should be followed by everyone, or else it will affect whoever is working with you. So when we say material handling, it means how the material has to be lifted, how the material has to be stored, or whether how material has to be moved. So these are all the topics that will be covered while handling materials. So what actually is material handling? Is defined as the art and science of moving, packing and storing of substances in any form. In any form, in the sense it can be either liquid or solid, semi-solid or gaseous. Okay, it's the art and science, means how material has to be moved, how it has to be packed and stored. So for all these there's a certain steps or procedures that has to be followed. Next, according to the survey, it's been estimated that 80% of material handling injuries is because of soft tissue injuries such as strains and sprains. So that means if proper steps are not taken while material handling, 80% of the injuries is because of strains and sprains, and the remaining 20% maybe because if proper safety precautions are not taken, it results in scrapes, bruises, and lacerations. And of course, as 80% of the injuries are because of strains and sprains, there are very costly injuries. The reason being they affect the lower back area. So actually, how we define strain or a sprain is a word which we are all familiar with. When we say sprain, it is an injury that is caused to the ligaments. Ligaments in the sense it's the tissues that connect bone to bone. Okay, so that means the tissue, if the tissues gets damaged or the ligaments gets damaged, it results in sprain. And when we say strain, a strain is an injury that is caused to the muscles or muscle tendons. That means the tissues that connects muscle to bone. So if the tissue that connects the muscle to the bone gets injured, it is called as strain. And if the tissue that connects bone to bone gets injured, it is called as sprain. So that's the major difference between a sprain and a strain. And if proper care is not taken while material handling, this is the most common injury that takes place in the workers. So that is what are the common causes of strains and sprain. And of course, strains and sprains usually takes place when something is done incorrectly. Incorrectly maybe in terms of whether lifting is done incorrectly, whether stretching is done. Stretching means when you are placing an item somewhere, you are stretching and you're stretching your body and placing it maybe overhead or maybe far away from your body. That is what you call stretching. Or when pushing or pulling is done incorrectly. And of course, other than this, other causes may also include poor physical condition, means the person who is doing the work is not physically fit to that particular job. Even that causes strains and sprains. Also poor posture, that is very important. That means poor posture, when we say poor postures, it means there are certain postures that has to be uh, that our body has to be in certain posture, certain position when doing certain work. If not, it results in strains and sprains. So let us see what are the objectives of handling material, or what are the objectives of material handling, why it is very important. The first objective of material handling is to lower unit materials handling cost. So it means that whenever we handle any material, it's always better to do in a bulk instead of doing unit wise. Unit wise means instead of taking and placing, or instead of taking and packing, or instead of moving one material at a time, it's always better to move in a bulk, move in a large quantity. so as to lower the handling cost if possible. Okay, and next, reduce manufacturing cycle time. Yes, so we know that every product has a certain manufacturing time cycle, means certain time period which it takes to get manufactured. Say maybe a day or maybe an hour, it depends, right? So if the material handling is done properly, that means we know that material has to move from one workstation to another workstation, and if it is done in a systematic way, so that means the material moves from one workstation to another workstation without any bottlenecks or without any blockades, then the overall total manufacturing time to produce a particular product gets reduced. To provide better control of the flow of material, as already explained, if the flow of material is systematic from workstation to workstation, so if there is a proper control, we will be knowing exactly where a particular material is at a particular given time. To provide better working conditions, next, to provide contribution for better quality by avoiding damages to product. That's if the everything is done in systematic manner, or if the product then it avoids damages to the product, means after a product has been manufactured, when moving it from one place to another, if a slippage occurs, then it may damage the product. But if material handling, there are certain steps that which, if followed accordingly, then all this can be reduced to a very large extent. To increase storage capacity, so once a product has been manufactured, usually they are kept in inventory. Inventory in the sense where it will be stored. And if storing is done properly, a lot of space can be utilized in a proper way. If not, there will be a lot of space wastage. So if proper, that's one of the objectives, to increase the storage capacity to make full utilize of the inventory or the given space. To provide higher productivity at lower manufacturing cost. If all the above objectives that we have discussed is followed accordingly, then the overall manufacturing cost can be reduced to a very large extent. So these are some of the objectives of material handling. So these are some of the do's and don'ts at workplace that has to be taken care while handling material. The red color indicates don'ts and the blue color indicates do's. While lifting, it says that the workbench or whatever the table is there where the product will be kept and you'll be working on it, it should be at a waist height, or if not possible, it should be adjustable so that it prevents you bending and working on it. Again, when moving, always as much as possible try using a trolley to move object from one place to another if it is large in size. And next is turning. When turning, we should make sure that there is enough space to turn around to prevent twisting, so that we should not stand at one position level, our leg should not be fixed and our waist should not be turning. Our whole body should turn. It's just not the twisting of the waist. So that means there should be enough space to do the turning. Then, when moving or bringing something down the staircase, always use elevating platforms when moving boxes through staircases. Instead of uh, holding and coming down the steps, it's always better to have a elevating platform where you can just place it at the top and someone can operate the elevating platform and collect it from the bottom. And next is reaching overhead items. If you want to place anything overhead at a certain height above your head, or if you want to take it from any overhead, always use a step stool or use elevating platforms or even step ladders to reach overhead, or you can either for reaching as well as taking down. So these are the do's and don'ts that should be done at a workplace when handling materials. Next comes to the lifting. So as already discussed, when we say material handling, it includes packing, lifting and moving. So these are some do's and don'ts which has to be taken care. Always if the object is heavy and bulky, it's always preferable to lift as a team. Okay. So doing is smart and safe. So it is always lifting in a team. They say that it's always smart and a safe way to work. And whenever you want to turn, do turn with legs. Do move your legs and feet when turning or lowering the load. Avoid twisting of your waist. That means don't put load on your waist. And for the turning and for moving, that's what we need enough space. And whenever you lift something, use your legs. Lift the load using your powerful legs and buttock muscles. It says that your feet should be wide apart, head and the back upright. Keep abdominal muscles tight and the load is very close to your body. This is how lifting has to be done of heavy objects. And whenever if you are lifting very objects beyond your capacity, always use some equipments like hand trucks or dollies or forklifts or trolleys. It makes by using all these mechanical equipments, it makes the work less and also less risk of injury. And always don't lift bulky loads alone. That's what it says. Do it as a team. Don't twist when lifting. That's what. Use always your legs. And in the next case, don't use your back. So we know how already discussed how to lift a heavy object, and don't lift heavy loads in the how they are shown in the sketch. It always results in back injuries. So these are the some of the lifting do's and don'ts. Next, again they mention some safe lifting postures. How to lift a object. If if you're not able to lift a heavy load properly, it can result in serious back injuries. Always make sure that you use your leg muscles when lifting any size. Never the back. Don't put any load on the lower back. And they also given the proper way to lift a shoulder high load. If the low object that you're lifting is at your shoulder height, there in the sketch they clearly mention the proper way of doing it. And also they mention after lifting it how it has to be put down onto the ground. So these are the steps that has to be followed while lifting. Coming to the next topic, material handling can be done by the two ways. Either it can be done manually or it can be done via machine. So if you're doing manually, it means like carrying bags or materials or unpacking materials. All these things will be done manually. Or if it is material handling is done via machine, it includes forklift, crane, and ringing. And also, material handling includes stacking or storing drums, barrels, kegs, lumber, loose bricks, or any other material. All this comes under material handling. Let us see some of the material handling principles. So, material handling principle means, of course, uh, there will always be some material that has to be moved in any industry. So, there are if certain principles are followed, it will be for the betterment of everyone. The first material handling principle, it says that material should be moved as little as possible. Material should be moved as little as possible, only when needed. A material should not be kept on moving around without any reason. Okay, material should be moved as little as possible, only if needed. Reduction in time, next principle, reduction in time by using shortest routers and mechanical material handling equipment. Suppose if a material has to be moved from one workstation to another workstation, try to find the shortest possible route to that workstation so that it results in saving in time and saving in energy, and always as much as possible make use of mechanical material handling equipment. Don't do it manually. Next principle, material movement should be in lots rather than individual units. Instead of moving material or handling material one at a time or one product at a time or one object at a time, it's always better to move the material in lots. So whenever we are moving in lots, always better to use some mechanical equipments like trolleys, dollies, or forklifts. And next principle, design of material handling equipment should be such that it can increase the effectiveness. So whatever mechanical equipment that are being used for handling material, it should be such that it increases the overall effectiveness. If you're doing a particular work manually, and if that manual work can be replaced by a machine, make sure that the machine that is being used is more effective then manually. Next principle, gravity should be used as much as possible. So that means if you want to move a object from a top position to a lower position, it's always better make use of gravity. So we can just let the object go from a higher position, so let it come down through gravity. That's what it says. Next principle, rehandling and backtracking of material should be avoided. Once if rehand here, when we say rehandling, that means when a material goes from one workstation to another workstation, it should not be again sent back to the previous workstation, assuming that it's the as it should not be sent back to the previous workstation, assuming that the wrong object has come to the particular workstation. So as much as possible, rehandling or use handling that same object and again should be provided. Also backtracking. Backtracking means the material again should not go back from to its previous position. That's what rehandling and backtracking of material should be avoided. The last principle, periodic repairing, maintenance and checkup of existing material handling equipment should be done every now and then. So all these principles, if followed, results in a good working environment, and also the overall manufacturing cost can be reduced to a very great extent. So these are the some of the do's and don'ts at workplace that has to be done taken care while handling material. The red color indicates don'ts and the blue color indicates do's. While lifting, it says that the workbench or whatever the table is there where the product will be kept and you'll be working on it, it should be at a waist height, or if not possible, it should be adjustable so that it prevents you bending and working on it. Again, when moving, always as much as possible try using a trolley to move object from one place to another if it is large in size. And next is turning. When turning, we should make sure that there is enough space to turn around to prevent twisting, so that our body should we should not stand at one position level, our leg should not be fixed and our waist should not be turning. Our whole body should turn. It's just not the twisting of the waist. So that if that so that means there should be there enough space to do the turning. Then when moving or bringing something down the staircase, always use elevating platforms when moving boxes through staircases. Instead of uh, holding and coming down the steps, it's always better to have a elevating platform where you can just place it at the top and someone can from the operate the elevating platform and collect it from the bottom. And next is reaching overhead items. If you want to place anything overhead at a certain height above your head, or if you want to take it from any overhead, always use a step stool or use elevating platforms or even step ladders to reach overhead, or you can either for reaching as well as taking down. So these are the uh, do's and don'ts that should be done at a workplace when handling materials. Next, why the need to reduce material handling related injuries? Why is so much important nowadays is being given to material handling related injuries? So, if material handling is done in a proper way, so these are the some of the benefit of this. One is increased productivity. Of course, if material handling, storing, lifting, moving, everything is done in a proper way, that means if everything is done in a sequential or a systematic manner, the productivity, more products can be produced for a given time. There will be no bottlenecks. There will be no holding up of any products or any materials. Lower work compensation and general insurance cost. We have discussed in the earlier slides, 80% of injuries, usually sprain and strain, takes place of improper material handling. And whenever a worker gets injured or laid off, then compensation has to be given. And if it is a fatal, or if the injury is fatal, if it is hospitalized, then general insurance cost will also has to be borne by the employer. Lower experience modifier rate, there's one more benefit. Next, reduction in direct and indirect cost of injuries is already discussed. We know that most of the injuries that takes place because of improper material handling can be reduced to a very great extent if proper material handling procedures are followed. Increased competitiveness. So when we say increased competitiveness, uh, as the production increases more and more, there'll be very healthy competition among the industries. Next, increased morale among employees. Everyone wants to work in an injury-free environment, and if injuries which related to material handling can be avoided, then it will increase the morale among the employees. There will be very good working environment where people will are very eager to work. So these are the some of the benefits if material handling injuries can be reduced. So this was regarding the safety precautions that has to be taken while material handling. So in the next session, we will see what are the precautions that has to be taken while handling compressed air cylinders. Thank you.